This Gaza blockade was never about religion. It was sold to you as religious, maybe even as a culture war. But it has always just been about trade routes, resource access, domination, empire. Who controls the ports? Who controls the pipelines? The sea lanes? Who are the gatekeepers? Why is this region important? Where does stuff usually get made? Where were Britain's colonies? All those consumer products that say made in China, all those clothes, the fast fashion clothes that you wear that come from Bangladesh, how are they getting to Europe and America? This story begins with the digging of the Suez Canal by the French. Why would the French spend all that time digging such a deep, long canal in a country that is not theirs? Must be religion. Gaza is trapped at a gate that was built 140 years ago. The Suez Canal was first built to turn Egypt into the epicenter of world trade. It was built initially by the French in 1859, but by 1875, the British, bankrolled by a loan they got from Nathan Rothschild, bought Egypt out and took control. Almost immediately, the British put troops on the ground and occupy British-mandated Palestine. That's where this started. Long before anyone mentioned the word Israel anywhere, the British had troops on the ground securing Haifa. And since then, London has held a lock on all Asia to Europe trade. British documents from their own archives from as early as 1915 show this all planned out. Winston Churchill converted the Royal Navy from using coal to using oil. There's no oil in Northwest Europe, not enough for a Royal Navy, and none of it in Britain. So they buy into a new company called Anglo-Persian Oil. Today that company is still in existence. It's called BP, British Petroleum, and these are still their oil routes. And Britain still uses oil, and enter America just to complicate things further. Back in 1915, the Bunsen Committee drew out this strip of land they deemed was oil-bearing land. It goes from the Gulf through Mesopotamia into the Mediterranean. The British strategy was simple and very clear. Secure Basra, Baghdad, Mosul, and Haifa. It was this same year they started writing letters to various Arab leaders, Jewish leaders, French leaders, manipulating them all and leaving what was going to happen after Britain got its way ambiguous, unclear, or just omitted entirely, as was the British communication strategy at the time. Just lie to people and gaslight the hell out of them, basically. By 1916, between the French and the British, they have carved up the entire region for Western extraction. Britain enters the Sykes-Picot Agreement with France and then quickly offers the Balfour Declaration to Jewish communities. Sorry, Zionist communities. Not Jewish. That's an important distinction. Jewish communities do not start relocating until after World War II. These guys were Jewish bankers and capitalists. And I think the distinction as referring to them as Zionists is very important. I have published a full plain terms walkthrough of the British Middle East strategy from this period in history. It's on my Substack if you want to understand this in full. But this map should be enough for most critically minded people to understand why this region matters so much in a globalized economy. But let's talk about this actual region here. Ports have always been a key lever. Whether a country eats or not, what can be sold out and what comes in is centralized by Port Authority. And they knew this in 1920. That's why the British built Haifa as a deep water port and then linked it to Iraqi oil fields. Gaza never seen any other investment. The coastline was left deliberately underdeveloped. And when the Palestinian Authority tried to build a seaport in the 90s, Israel bombed it. Today's blockade runs on the same imperial logic and legal structures they inherited from the British Empire. Ports are a choke point. Every bag of cement, every vial of medication, every fishing net, everything requires their permission. And they're so weird about this control that at one point they had exactly mapped how many calories they would allow through to keep Gazans alive but not, and quote, fat. This is empire via spreadsheet. Literally nothing has changed. But what's worse is that this is not even just about blocking goods. Israel has frozen Gaza's future. In 1999, a major gas field was discovered in Palestine's territorial water. And for a moment, Palestinians dreamed that this resource might make them prosperous. Gas is very profitable. Unfortunately, a lot of countries have not converted to renewable energy. There's a demand for this. And yet, in 25 years, not a single cubic foot of gas has been extracted. Why? Because Israel has blocked every attempt at development here. What Israel is doing is, one, denying Palestinians any sort of benefit of their own natural resources, and two, protecting its own gas industry from competition. This is not new behavior by Israel. It's a colonial pattern. The British also forbade Indian industries from competing with British ones. Additionally, since Gaza's ability to import freely is curtailed, much of what Gaza buys, food, fuel, consumer products, has to be bought through Israeli vendors. Liberating Gaza puts them out of business. Israeli vendors then have to compete with other locals, and they don't get away at putting such extensive markups on the products anymore. Colonial powers practiced the exact same logic, and they often couched it in the exact same eugenics terms. The British Raj would respond to famines by saying native lives are cheaper. For Israel, denying development has become more powerful for them commercially than actually going in and extracting themselves. Gaza is for these vendors a captive market. Ports, laws, trade routes, choke points, calories, vetoes. That is the architecture of the imperial outpost. This is not an outcome of an unresolved conflict. It isn't even just ideological insanity or racism. This is commercial. This is what happens after a century of normalized capitalism. This is the continuity of the empire's strategy. Keep the gates shut until they can best serve the system. To stop this, the West needs to reflect on how it has normalized colonial shipping as modern business, and ask genuinely whether any country should be able to chokehold a trade route like this. You can boycott and protest and send freedom flotillas all day long. It is the insurers that still insure these ships. It is the bankers that still license these bonds. It is the tech companies who still allow the holding of this data. And it is the global structures of governance that we seem to think don't require any reform that hold this blockade in place. If you are not challenging the banks legally, if you are not challenging the shipping companies directly, you're not scaring Israel. Israel lives off its canal traffic. A dent in the demand would hit freight rates, investors, and insurers all at once. An impactful call to action here could be as simple as stop buying from Asia for 1 week. The empire has always only ever cared about its trade routes. You strike the core of the imperial machine through the banks.